500 years ago, an entire city lost control of its own body. Hundreds of men, women, young people, all began dancing. Not because there was music, not because there was a celebration, but because they couldn't stop. This is the story of the dancing plague of 1518. Before we get into it, if you're new here, welcome. This channel is all about the strangest, most unbelievable true medical stories history has to offer. And trust me, this one's a wild ride. If you want more of these, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. And if you're already subscribed, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow more than you'd think. Okay, back to the story. In the summer of 1518, the city of Strasbourg was actually a pretty nice place to live, at least compared to a lot of other cities in Europe back then. It was a busy trading city. Every morning, merchants would set up their stores and people would pack into the markets to buy food before heading off to work. Life certainly wasn't easy. There had been several bad harvests, food was expensive, disease was always around, and people were deeply religious. If something terrible happened, most people didn't look for a scientific explanation. They believed God, or one of the saints, was trying to tell them something. So when one woman suddenly walked out of her house on a hot July morning and started dancing in the middle of the street, people noticed. Her name was Frau Trophia. She wasn't dancing to any music, she just started moving, twisting her body around in the street outside her own front door. Her husband came out and told her to stop. She ignored him. An hour passed, then 2, then 3. Neighbors started gathering to watch, and still Frau Trophea kept dancing right through the afternoon heat without stopping to eat or drink or rest. Finally, as night fell, she collapsed in the street, twitching, completely spent. Everyone who saw it figured that was the end of it. Some woman had some kind of fit, and now it was over. Except the next morning, Frau Trophea got back up and started dancing again. Her feet were already swollen. Blood was starting to soak through her shoes. But she kept going for a second day. Then a third, then a fourth. By some accounts, she danced almost non-stop for nearly a week. By now, this wasn't just a strange thing happening on one street anymore. Word had spread across Strasbourg, and people were coming from all over the city just to see her. Hawkers, beggars, traveling pilgrims, even priests and nuns, all standing there, watching this one woman dance herself half to death. The city authorities didn't know what to do with her. Eventually, they loaded her onto a wagon and sent her 30 miles away to a shrine dedicated to a saint named Vitus. The thinking was simple. If Saint Vitus had cursed her with this affliction, then Saint Vitus was the one who could lift it. But here's where the story stops being about one woman. While Frau Trophia was dancing in the streets of Strasbourg, some of the people watching her started dancing too. Not because they wanted to, they just couldn't stop themselves. Within days, more than 30 people were out in the streets dancing uncontrollably, and some of them were dancing with such violence and exhaustion that it was becoming genuinely dangerous. The city council realized they had a real crisis on their hands and they needed an explanation, fast. The clergy had one theory. This was Saint Vitus's fury being unleashed on the city for its sins. But the council went a different direction. They brought in physicians instead, and the physicians came back with a diagnosis. This wasn't a curse. It was a physical illness caused by blood that had become dangerously overheated inside the body. And the cure they recommended was strange, to put it mildly. According to the physicians, the only way to burn this sickness out of a person was to let them keep dancing. So the council did something almost unbelievable. They ordered carpenters to build wooden stages right in the middle of the busiest public squares in the city. They hired musicians, drummers, fiddlers, horn players, paid to play non-stop, specifically to keep the afflicted moving. They even brought in healthy dancers to dance alongside them to help encourage the sickness out of their bodies. The idea was that if people just danced it out in full public view, their bodies would eventually give out, the mania would break, and it would all be over. It did the exact opposite, because now, instead of one strange woman in a side street, the entire city could watch dozens of people flailing, spinning and convulsing on public stages day after day, and to a deeply religious population that already believed the saint's wrath was loose in their city, this didn't look like sickness, it looked like proof. More and more people started getting pulled into it. Within about a month, one family's private records put the number of afflicted at 400 people across Strasbourg. That's when the council finally realized their plan had backfired, catastrophically, and they reversed course completely. The stages came down. Dancing and music were banned across the entire city for weeks. The only exception being quiet string instruments at weddings, since drums and tambourines were now considered dangerous, and the worst cases were loaded onto wagons for a 3-day journey back to that shrine of Saint Vitus. Priests laid the afflicted beneath a carved statue of the saint, pressed small crosses into their hands, put red shoes onto their feet, and anointed those shoes with holy water and consecrated oil, all while incense burned and prayers were chanted over them in Latin. And somehow, it worked, or at least it appeared to. Word spread that those who made the pilgrimage were getting better, and within about a week the stream of new dancers slowed to a trickle. By the time it was finally over, the dancing plague of 1518 had lasted somewhere between a month and 6 weeks. It's believed as many as 15 people were dying every single day from sheer physical exhaustion. If that death rate held for the full outbreak, the total toll could have run into the hundreds. So what actually caused it? A physician named Paracelsus visited Strasbourg less than a decade later and came up with his own explanation. He believed Frau Trophea had started dancing deliberately to humiliate her husband, and that other women copied her because they secretly wanted to torment their own husbands too. It says a lot more about how women were viewed in the 1500s than it does about any real medical cause. More recently, some researchers pointed to ergot, a toxic mold that grows on damp rye and can cause convulsions and hallucinations. But historian John Waller, who has studied this case extensively, shot that theory down. Ergot poisoning also cuts off blood flow to the hands and feet. Someone suffering from it wouldn't be physically capable of dancing for days at a time. Waller's own theory is simpler and honestly more unsettling. The people of Strasbourg in 1518 were living under an enormous weight of suffering, failed harvests, a new and terrifying disease spreading through Europe, political unrest, and they had been raised on a genuine, deep-rooted belief that a vengeful saint could curse a person. When that suffering became unbearable for a handful of people, their minds and bodies expressed it the only way their culture had already told them was possible. And once a few people started, everyone around them already believed it could happen to them too. That belief spread through the population almost like a virus, not through the air, but through fear. It's not even the only time in history something like this has happened. In 1963, in a school in Tanganyika, modern-day Tanzania, a small group of girls started laughing. And within days, 2/3 of the school was laughing and crying uncontrollably. The school shut down. The kids went home and the laughing spread with them. Entire villages ended up affected, with doctors documenting hundreds of cases, some lasting an entire week. 500 years later, nobody has a perfect answer for what really happened in Strasbourg that summer. But the leading theory isn't a curse, and it isn't overheated blood, and it definitely isn't a secret plot against husbands. It's that a group of desperate suffering people gripped by collective fear quite literally danced their way through an entire city.